Welcome to the Fear Room channel. Enjoy your viewing. Jail. Suddenly the light turned on, which unceremoniously interrupted Marina's sleep. Fourth detachment. Rise, the detachment duty officer yelled in a smoky voice. The convicts habitually began to climb out of their beds and put on identical kibish robes. There was the usual morning rumble in the detachment, and the daily bustle began. The convicts made their beds, rattled the doors of their bedside tables. The detachment was preparing to line up to wash up in an organized manner. A new day was beginning in the women's correctional colony. Do you need a special invitation, beauty? The detachment's duty officer, a huge, dopey woman, came up to Marina's bed and looked down at her contemptuously with small rat eyes. It was Marina's first morning in IK 40, and Marina, not realizing the consequences of her action, pointedly turned her back to the detachment duty officer. Marina came to her senses already in the medical block. My whole body ached and my head was spinning. Why are you doing this? Marina turned with difficulty towards the voice and saw an old woman lying on the next bed, who for some reason was carefully looking not at Marina herself, but into the space next to the girl's bed. The woman looked to be about 80 years old, and her body was covered with prison tattoos. I don't know. I don't care, Marina answered sadly and turned to the wall. And I know you committed a big sin, girl, and you're paying for it. Look, the dead woman is following you. What? Do you see her too? Don't be silent, please answer. Marina, not paying attention to the pain, turned again to her neighbor in the prison ward. The woman looked shrewdly at Marina and shook her head reproachfully. Tell me who she is. The woman nodded her head and pointed somewhere into the void. Yes, tell me, don't be afraid, she repeated. I have no less sins. It's not just that I got here, I don't have long left now that I've started seeing the dead. Tell me what's tormenting you and you'll probably feel better. I'll die soon, maybe I'll put in a word for you there. Maybe it'll count for me too. And Marina made up her mind. I have always been a very beautiful girl. I am the only child in the family, so my parents never refused me anything. I had everything that other children could only dream of at my age. I grew up in luxury and abundance, so I allowed myself to be arrogant towards people. This is probably why I never had real friends. There was only Vera. This silent and smiling girl sat with me at the same desk from the first grade and lived in a neighboring house. Vera lived alone with her grandmother, so they did not live richly. Vera usually dressed very modestly, but at the same time neatly and tastefully. I always teased her about this. Vera only smiled sadly in response and lowered her eyes. Vera and I became close when I started copying her homework. Then Vera began to come to our house in the evenings. I told my parents that we were friends. In fact, all I needed from her was for her to solve math problems or write an essay on literature for me. This is how Vera and I grew up. After school, Vera went to college, and I was going to get married successfully and was looking for a suitable candidate for the role of husband. But what came as a surprise to me was that the men assigned me only the role of a mistress, and no one was in a hurry to marry me. Since Vera was studying and still managed to work somewhere in her free time from studying, we now communicated with her much less often. I called Vera more out of habit and out of boredom. I didn't make any new friends, but I needed someone to throw out all my anger, irritation, and dissatisfaction with life. Vera, as in childhood, took my problems very seriously. She came to me in the middle of the night and cried with me when another lover left me. Soon Vera graduated from college and opened a small travel agency. Vera always loved geography, but their family could never afford to travel. I often used this, and with a feeling of superiority talked about where my parents and I went again. Vera listened with interest, and every time she enthusiastically looked at the photographs from our next trip. And now her dream of traveling the world has come true, and even brought her a small but stable income. Time passed, my parents died, and of all my former prosperity, I only had my parents' apartment left. I never knew how to work, and I didn't want to, so I existed on the support of numerous lovers. Soon Vera graduated from college and opened a small travel agency. Vera always loved geography, but their family could never afford to travel. I often used this, and with a feeling of superiority talked about where my parents and I went again. Vera listened with interest, and every time she enthusiastically looked at the photographs from our next trip. And now her dream of traveling the world has come true, and even brought her a small but stable income. Time passed, my parents died, and of all my former prosperity, I only had my parents' apartment left. I never knew how to work, and I didn't want to, so I existed on the support of numerous lovers. Against the backdrop of failures in my personal life, a huge shock for me was an unexpected call from Vera with an invitation to an engagement. I didn't know that Vera had a boyfriend. I was never interested in my friend's life at all, and during meetings we discussed only my problems and dubious achievements. Knowing Vera's natural modesty and correctness, I can assume that Vera was uncomfortable talking about her more successful personal life against the backdrop of my love failures. Vera's boyfriend was from Spain. Vera met him through her work. That's why they organized such an unusual event for the Russian average person as an engagement party. Vera said that on this day she could not allow her best friend not to share with her the joy that she and her fiancé would officially announce their desire to get married. I won't tell you how the engagement went, but when I arrived in Spain, I was surprised to learn that Vera's boyfriend turned out to be a young, very handsome, and very wealthy groom. After the engagement of Vera and Max, who also turned out to be Russian by origin, I cried into my pillow all night, smearing makeup on the silk pillowcases. I didn't understand why. Why did this gray mouse get everything for herself: a business, a rich husband, a yacht, and a villa in Spain? After all, she doesn't need any of this. She never even dreamed about it. And I, a beautiful and smart girl, was left alone in a sad provincial town without money, without a husband, without children, and without hope of organizing my life. And I swore then that I would do anything to win. I will not allow this creature to bypass me and become happy. I will take revenge on her for all the pain she caused me today. Arriving home, I changed my apartment, found my grandmother, and threw photographs of Max and Vera and a plump envelope with money on the table in front of her. I need her to die, and he couldn't live without me, I said calmly. The witch looked at me with interest, shook her head approvingly, and agreed to help. A month after my appeal to the witch, Vera called me and, sobbing into the phone, asked permission to come to my home. She, sobbing, said that Max had abandoned her. I don't have time, I said coldly, and hung up. Max was lying next to me at this time and listening to our conversation. Soon Vera fell ill. She often tried to call me, but I did not answer the phone. Then I found out that she died. She burned out in a few weeks from some unknown disease. But something went wrong with Max. He became addicted to drugs and gambling. As a result, a year after our wedding, I became the wife of a complete drug addict. I wanted to get a divorce, but then I would again be left with nothing. And I arranged for Max to die. At Max's funeral, I saw her again for the first time. Vera stood next to Max's coffin and looked at me with hatred. After that, she is constantly next to me. Even here, after I was accused of killing Max, this damn thing is now standing next to me and looking at me with its empty black eyes. Marina finished the story and looked towards the bed of her silent listener. The woman lay motionless. Her eyes were open and covered with a cloudy haze of death, and fear froze in her dead eyes. Fear of retribution for sins. After all, sooner or later you will have to answer for everything. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel. We will be glad to see you again. Ahaha.